Hello and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Leanne Hughes. Now, this interview, the first interview I did with today's guest is Jenny Blake, who is my ultimate hero, my favorite author, my favorite human. She is just a delight. Her new book is called Free Time, Lose the Busy Work and Love Your Business. This book is outstanding, and I love Jenny's philosophy around promoting free time. Before we dive into the conversation, I want to share something on Jenny's website about her book so you can understand where this book is coming from. So here we go. Your time is far more precious than money. It is your presence, your memories, your quality of life. For many, growth fueled by added stress is not worth the trade-off. You have an urge to simplify and streamline. Ask yourself, are you consistently doing the work that you and only you can do? If you are burdened by busy work, the bottleneck in the way of your company's profit and potential, this is a book for you. If you too have flashes of entrepreneurial, burn it all down mode, you are not alone. This book will teach you practical strategies to run your business to have more time and money by building smarter systems. How can we earn twice as much in half the time with joy and ease while serving the highest good? This is the guiding question behind Free Time, a playbook to free your mind, time, and team for your best work. It's an invitation to reimagine how you run your business. How good is that? So in this conversation, we talk about many different topics. We bounce around many different ways. We discuss, well, first of all, I asked Jenny about Nonlinear Breakthroughs. There's a mention of first-time facilitator podcast in her new book, and she shares that example and what it actually means for us and our business and our growth. We talk about niching down and how you can actually think about selecting what you do with your business. And something she talks about is creating a permission slip. So I guess a question to ask yourself right now is, what do you need permission to do? Jenny's been a massive influence in my life, but she is an author, a podcaster, a keynote speaker who loves helping business owners move from friction to flow through smarter systems powered by delightfully tiny teams. She's based in Manhattan with her husband and beautiful German Shepherd Ryder. I discovered her work through her podcast called Pivot with Jenny Blake, and she also has the Free Time podcast where you can find Jenny interviewing people on how they're freeing their time. It's what a great movement, right? Enjoy the show. Jenny, it's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Leanne. There's nowhere else I would rather be right now. Thank you for having me.
Yay. And I'm joined also, to make this moment even more special, is joined by members of the Booked Out Facilitator crew who are here to co-host today and ask JB some questions. But JB, I've got to kick off. You're here because you have been busy this whole year. Busy is an interesting word because we're talking about your book, Free Time, Lose the Busy Work and Love Your Business. So in the book, you actually mentioned this podcast, First Time Facilitator, when you're explaining something called the Nonlinear Breakthrough. And I think we're all brought up hearing phrases like the harder you work, the luckier you get, and work hard, and hustle, hustle, hustle. Can you explain to listeners what is a nonlinear breakthrough and how it can serve us in our business?
Yes, you are featured in the book in this section. And it's the story of how First Time Facilitator came to be, which is that before your podcast even existed, you attended a podcasting conference. They asked people to throw their name into the ring of their show, and not even having a show yet, but knowing you might want to create one someday, you put the First Time Facilitator on that blue Post-it. To me, this is an example of just the magic and serendipity and synchronicity that happens. Yes, when we show up, but it doesn't always have to follow this linear capital H, capital W, hard work path to success. And I think so much in the business world and even in our own minds, and maybe because of our upbringing, our culture, our socialization, our schooling, we get this idea that everything is going to be hard. And on some level, I think, of course, it's good to expect some hard work so that we don't quit when things do get challenging or difficult, or we have to work through those inevitable dips. But the whole idea of inviting a nonlinear breakthrough is saying, yes, I'm willing to show up and work hard. And what if I have a total breakthrough moment around this, or a hockey stick, as they say in the business world, moment of nonlinear growth, nonlinear breakthrough, nonlinear ahas, or big opportunities, big breaks. And that's exactly what your story illustrates, Leanne, is yes, you were taking the steps and showing up, but also how could you know that your blue Post-it would get picked out of everybody, those hundreds of people there in that room? And that sparked you starting the show and holding yourself accountable and saying, well, I better do this now, and taking it as a sign from the universe. And I think that I find for myself, the first and best thing to do is just ask for a nonlinear breakthrough wherever things get tough. So we just say, I am open to receive a nonlinear breakthrough in this area or in any area that we're experiencing a lot of friction.
That's great. And I love that you talk about, because my next question was going to be, well, how do we create it? Because we love, I'm sure all of us want hockey stick moments every day where there's exponential ideas and growth. And something that you talk to with Penny Pierce on your Pivot podcast, you've had about 7 or 8 episodes with her, is that moment of liminal space. And I think as facilitators and people that are solopreneurs having their own business, we're always told to like focus on one thing and go all in and niche down. And we're like, hang on, but we're curious. I see Jade here. Jade has got like a wealth of talent across many different domains. Sorry to throw you there, Jade. Is it just about asking and then being open to it? The pressure to niche down? What do you think about that?
Just the whole free time philosophy is anywhere that there's pressure that isn't the good kind, that we have other options. I am just, yes, you know me well, Leanne. I'm a social media curmudgeon in that I'm just determined to run my business entirely without it. And in this day and age, that seems almost impossible. And yet I cannot understand why I would do something that I don't enjoy, that drains me, just because I'm supposed to, or I feel pressured to do that. Now, some would say you could treat social media, if it's for your business and not you personally, you could treat it as doing your taxes or your bookkeeping. Like we all have to do our bookkeeping. So, okay, sure, you could create some systems. In terms of the pressure to niche down, same thing. My first book was called Life After College. And one of my many existential crises professionally was, oh no, I don't want to be stuck talking about life after college for the rest of time. I was 27 when the book came out. So my next pivot before the book pivot existed was to a website called jennyblake.me. It was under my own name. And it was systems at the intersection of mind, body, and business. And here that theme has carried through for the last 10 years and is now coming fully back into the picture with this new book, Free Time. And I just felt like I am going to talk about the things that are interesting to me and attract whoever that attracts. So I think when it comes to niching down, yes, it is helpful to try to get momentum with one hypothesis of your ideal audience. And I do think that if we spread ourselves too thin, it's hard to get traction, whether you spread yourself thin in terms of very different audiences that you're trying to reach, or in terms of many different product lines. That creates a lot of added complexity. It's like 10x the work or 100x the work when it comes to systems, communications, documentation, everything, because you're spread so thin. It is hard to get real traction in any one. But if you have an audience, like for me, I talk about heart-based business owners. Well, I did this little profile, and I know we all have heard about these ideal avatar exercises, but I just said, okay, they must love books. They're bookworms. They probably have Apple products, phone or laptop. They probably have a Peloton membership, even if not the bike, maybe they use the app. I don't know. I just kind of made this list of the things that bring me joy. And not every person will tick every one of those boxes, but I don't think we need to hold back or apologize for who we are or limit ourselves in terms of how we express who we are. Mm-hmm. And you know this from podcasting, Leanne, not every episode is for every person. So there are podcasters like Tim Ferriss, even Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan alternates between MMA and jiu-jitsu fighters, really interesting intellectuals and professors and comedians. What is this? How does he have the most popular podcast in the world with this crazy combination? Jerry Seinfeld, his show, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. He just chose 3 things he loves: comedians, cars, coffee, smashed them together, and has this super popular web series that the best part about it is seeing his joy and delight at all 3 of those things in every episode. So I'm a big fan of take your unique Venn diagram, put them together, and let that be what helps you stand out. And also what helps you want to show up every time, because a lot of this content creation stuff is really a long game, as Dory Clark talks about in her new book. And why not be super excited, even if you know that it's okay. It's give yourself permission. Every 3rd piece of content does not have to be for everyone, and that's okay.
I love that. I love how you talk about it being a hypothesis as well. Although in fairness, like I ticked all 3 of those things: bookworm, Apple products, just got the Peloton. So, yes. Yeah.
Oh, that must mean I'm doing something right, because you are one of my favorite people on the planet. So that's cool. I love knowing that.
I want to pick up on the topic of you being allergic to social media, yet having an extremely profitable business, being a known thought leader in your space as well. I want to throw to Petra. That's actually when I met Petra Kolber in New York, I was like, oh, I've got my own Petra friend in Australia. So here she is. Over to you, Petra.
Oh, thanks so much. Hey, Jenny, thanks so much for being here. I've been following your work for quite some time and I've listened to your podcast for I don't know how many years. And I remember it quite vividly. I was in the gym when we were away. It was pre-pandemic and you mentioned you're not on social media. I thought, wow, how does she do it? And that was pre-pandemic. And now everyone has gone online and there is not necessarily the opportunity to have in-person events and workshops and conferences where through my speaking engagements, I got business. So the question is, how do you now build your business without being on social media where we live in a digital first world?
Great questions. And you're as radiant as my friend Petra Kolber. So it's nice to meet you. Thank you so much for listening and reading. I believe that it's possible. If we only believe what society gives us, and PS, these profiteering, growth at all costs, social media companies, conglomerates, monopolies, we're just never even going to try anything differently. So for starters, I reject, this might be the questioner in me, the rebel, I don't know, but I just downright reject when profits are at play for my attention or my time or my medical, anything like that. So for starters, giving ourselves permission to be very skeptical of what we're told or what we think we need to do. So that skepticism can then open the door to not is it possible to run a business with social media, but how can I run an abundant business without social media? And that question and then I'm inviting a nonlinear breakthrough around this or nonlinear breakthroughs in my revenue as a result of, so not only what if things didn't come crashing down if you shut down your social accounts, what if they improved? Can you imagine? What if your attention was even more focused and streamlined and you could produce even more quality, deep, thoughtful, creative, original work? So then I like to question, and that skepticism helps me go, what if the opposite of what I thought would happen is true? And then we just have this open, receptive, creative brainstorming around it. For me, social media is how I got started, no doubt. I started my website in 2005, blogging in 2007, started having cupcake tweet ups in 2009, went early to South by. I mean, there's no question that I made a ton of relationships. What I realized starting around 2012 was I was not convinced that I was getting any clients from shouting on a social media soapbox. My clients were coming from my books, from that deeper, more thoughtful, original IP. I know Leanne's had a lot of people on the podcast to talk about IP and licensing and train the trainer. So I came to realize that it's not like I'm shutting down my number one source of incoming leads. If that were the case, I probably wouldn't have closed it down. But I realized I also don't like to be for myself. Doesn't matter to me at all what anyone else does and whatever brings you joy. Like if you love social media, by all means, you're lucky. I consider you lucky because you're right in the zeitgeist of what is happening. I don't like to be hypocritical in that I don't want to post frequently on social media when I knew that I wasn't reading anyone else's stuff. I didn't want to read their stuff. I didn't want to comment. I didn't want to feel every time I posted that I now owed a bunch of replies on comments. For me, the whole thing just had a lot of obligation because I'm a people pleaser and I get guilty easily. And so I didn't want to be posting if I wasn't going to be engaging. When I had that insight and gave myself permission, that's just how I am, that I felt so much better. And I realized none of my business really comes from just me tweeting. It comes from the bigger, deeper work. Like in the last 10 years of running a business, I've written 3 books and I have 2 podcasts. That's it. I channel all my energy. And because I'm not on social and distracted by all these comments and threads and home feeds and addiction machines, I can just read every day and think and take my time to produce as original work as I can. And that's where my clients come from. So that's the long winding version. I will say it's important. I do think it's helpful to have what I call ongoing public original thinking. So that means ongoing, like a podcast. For me, my 2 channels are podcast and newsletter. And I've been horrible with my newsletter this year. But the podcast is an ongoing public original thinking kind of format. So it allows me to just keep putting thoughts out. Every episode is like planting little seeds, serendipity popcorn, as I call it in the book. And you never know who's going to listen. Like, Petra, it's amazing to meet you. And you've been there reading and listening this whole time, but we're only connecting now. So that's what I do love to choose 1 or 2 channels that I know fit my strengths and energy that I can do consistently. And I trust that the business will follow from those. And in my case, it has. But if you're someone whose social media does generate a lot of interest, then you can start to delegate some aspects of it and keep going. It just, for me, that the biggest fears around it, they just didn't really materialize into anything.
Thank you. And we'll talk about licensing in a moment. So we'll definitely get to that because there were a couple of questions that came through on that. But social media, I mean, I associate with distraction. And you had Nereal on your show. My question to you is, where I find I get my deep work is when no one else is online. So actually, like during the holiday break is when I feel like I get the most done. On weekends, when the temptation isn't to check my email like 5 times an hour. It really early in the morning, I got out a proposal at like 5 a.m. because I knew that around 11, 12, I'll just get distracted. So my question is like, how do we create moments like that, but where I don't have to start escaping on the weekends or wait for a holiday to be more focused?
Tell me about it. I can relate to this so much. Each of my 3 books, I started them at the Christmas holiday, the December holiday, because it was the time of the year that everyone else was offline. And I knew that no one was expecting anything from me. And psychologically, that was such a satisfying feeling that like nobody needs me. And I know that I'm not a brain surgeon or a heart surgeon or anything that has actual urgency. The other interesting thing is not quite 10 years ago now, I spent some time in Southeast Asia, which is over on all of your side of the globe. And it was the most magical thing because I would wake up, answer all my emails from people in the US, and then I could spend the whole day free, just free and clear. Nobody was emailing me because the US was asleep. And never since that time, I've not had the inbox piece that I experienced. There was a really special sense of free time, knowing that everyone else was away or asleep. So I think that sometimes it is nice to embrace this, maybe not if it means that you're working extra. Like I'm a big fan of sometimes working on a Saturday or a Sunday, but then give yourself Monday and a Friday off or give yourself Wednesdays off. Like I like hacking this a little bit because as much as I wish I was the type of person that could say like, I really don't care who needs what from me whenever at any time, I can create deep work whenever I want it. But I think the source of this question, Leanne, is such a good one, which is that sometimes it just feels good to know no one really, genuinely, it is a more quiet time. Even here in New York City, the streets are more quiet on Saturday mornings. Like everything creates a more peaceful sense of time. Another thing is that I like to, I never make myself do emails in any of my deep work windows, whether it's on a weekend or not. So I like to tee up some kind of project that I'm actually excited about to work on. So if I am going to work on a Saturday morning or one of those quiet pockets, I find something really juicy that is really a reward, almost a reward to work on. And I make sure that things like email really stay in their place. Like I don't allow the pressures, as you probably know, Leanne, because how slow I am sometimes. But I really, that is one area where I've tried to be more forgiving with myself and just not to let the pressures of that creep in to the deep work times. Because I think that if we don't defend our best energy windows, email's endless. It's never ending. It will never end. People will never stop requesting things. And the logic is that the more successful you become, what's the reward? The more emails you're going to get. So it's like, once I realized that success was only going to magnify the problem of distraction and overwhelm, that's when I kind of realized, okay, I can't, it's like, there's no there. There's no feeling of productivity around some of those day-to-day reactive modes of working are going to make up for me just carving out the deep work time that I need.
Actually, that was probably one of my favorite things I did last year. I don't know if it was a podcast or maybe your free time course, but it was just block out every Monday in your calendar, and just make it. So I do it. It's in advance, Deep Work Monday. That doesn't mean I'm not available, if things come up, but I get to make a choice and it's not by default of accepting it.
Yes. I block off Mondays and Fridays. Mondays, sometimes I end up doing admin around the house. Today I did all day email, which is rare. I don't always do that on Mondays, but I had no meetings. Well, I mean, this delightful session, but I was able to just pick what my energy was. And a lot of the free time book was written on those unscheduled Mondays. And I couldn't have known. I'm not the type of person that will put on my calendar, work on the free time book every Monday from now until whenever. So yeah, Leanne, I love that strategy too. And Fridays as well. And sometimes it means that you have a free day to go run errands outside of the house. It doesn't always end up for work, but it's so nice not to have to shuffle things around. So
Mm,
yeah, I'm a big fan of no meeting Mondays or Fridays.
amazing. Let's bring in Wednesdays as well. Let's see
Oh
what we
yeah, Wednesdays are just for the podcast. So, but nothing else can
yeah,
get scheduled.
there we go. I love
Yeah.
it. Prina, you've got a question around non-linear breakthroughs.
Yeah, or Jenny, a couple of questions actually, or question comments, I would say. So, hello, Prina from Western Australia. One, I guess, more of a statement. So, deep work, while we're talking about having breaks for deep work and actually allocating proper time for us, this is something that I always talk about with my corporate clients in the form of please, please, please allow yourself some balcony time, is how I pitch it. Corporates find it really difficult. It's more easy for us as entrepreneurs to carve out our own time in that respect, but it can be done in the corporate sense if you are organized and if you do allow time for it. So that's the more rigid aspect of that deep work time. And then linking to that as well, the non-linear breakthroughs. I love what you were saying about that when we opened the conversation. Serendipity popcorn. I've heard that from Leanne a lot when we've been talking. So exactly that. And again, talking about the non-linear breakthroughs, again, that's more attributed to us as entrepreneurs because we have the ability to be crazy and kooky and creative more so than the corporate people do. But is there an opportunity for corporates as well to allow for that non-linear breakthrough?
Oh yeah. Well, I would never hold anyone back from an NLB. Yeah, I would say, of course, so whatever it is that they're working on or the challenge, that yes, they're I just so firmly, I would never let anyone tell me. So this is again the rebel. It's like I just never want to let anyone tell me how things are going to be or what's possible. What I do think is challenging in corporate is you're part of a big culture machine of how that company works, how meetings are scheduled, when they're scheduled. My friend recently, she's an outside consultant, but the team scheduled her for 7 a.m. on a Monday. And she wrote back and said, sorry, I'm not available then. But it was part of their culture that it was okay to book a meeting at 7 a.m. on a Monday. When I worked at Google, I remember just Monday through Friday was wall to wall meetings, no transition time in between. I'd walk to meetings with my laptop open, crooked in my elbow. And it was a disaster. I mean, I was physically, health wise, it was nearly impossible. And I am not fit for that culture. Like I can say now, for someone who's in it, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by balcony time, but I'm a big fan of creating buffer time. And I think when you're in corporate, you have to just put private meetings on the calendar that are for yourself. Otherwise, people take them. That's what's so tricky about corporate calendars is that people feel kind of entitled to just grab the time. And then another interesting dynamic that my friend Sarah pointed out is that the dynamic when you're a outside consultant working with a company, they are paid a salary no matter what. So they like to schedule all these meetings. Let's have a weekly sync from now until your event. Whereas on our end, our time is precious. Our time is, we're not being paid for all those weekly syncs, but they're getting their paycheck no matter what. And why not talk to you, this very interesting outside person, every week? So the incentives around time and scheduling are quite different. For those of us who are self-employed, what I find is that when I book something like a keynote, I say, this comes, I learned only after many years, almost 10 years of doing it, I learned to say, when you book this keynote, it comes with a 30-minute pre-event strategy session and a 30-minute post-event debrief. And that allowed me to put a very clear boundary of there is one, whether you do 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or an hour, the expectation is set that there's one strategy session that you get to use. We're not going to just hop on a call every time you feel like it to plan this event, which I used to do. I actually used to do. And the reason I add the post-event call is that that's a nice doorway for me to say, how did it go? And are you interested in train the trainer? Some of my more scalable train the trainer, AKA licensing. In a way, that post-event meeting is for me, because that's when I get to say, great, what else? What can we do next? And of course, also hear the feedback and see how it went for them. But I find that bracketing my own time like that when working with corporate is quite helpful. I don't know, Prina, if that got to all of your questions within there. Did I miss?
Absolutely. I think from a corporate sense as well, you have to just be a bit more clever with it, know the system, play with the system. block out time, as you said, and just work with it.
Yes. And I also realized when I was at Google, I realized no one manager or leader. I mean, there were a few. I had one manager, we referred to as a fire breathing dragon because like she had the highest turnover. People were getting physically ill. She was kind of a gaslighting. Now we have this language, gaslighting, bullying type. Barring that, I find most people in corporate don't have ill intentions. However, the nature of the beast, especially in tech companies, of the corporate machine is like, it will take everything from you and then some. And I realized halfway through my tenure at Google that if I don't put my own boundaries, it's going to take everything and more. And if I don't stop caring about my next promotion, like caring about my next promotion is going to kill me. So at one point I decided, only to myself, I didn't tell anyone, I am not going to kill myself for this job anymore. I'm going to give it like 75%. And if they need to fire me, well, it will take at least 6 months because they'll have to put me on a performance plan and then they'll have to, just start the firing process. What ended up happening was that nobody noticed. Like I still exceeded expectations in Google speak in my performance review, but I had stopped just the grind. And so what I see sometimes with corporate is people, they are checking their email at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 p.m. at night. And what would happen? Would anyone notice if you didn't answer, if you didn't check at 10? Okay, great. Try that. Then would they notice if you don't check or respond at 9 p.m.? Okay, great. Try that. Now work it up to 8, 7, 6, and just have some fun with these little micro experiments, like you said, Preena, of working the system a little bit and seeing how to take your time back, really without them noticing. Like you don't have to make a big fuss about it. And I do think that thank goodness now companies are so much more open to flexible work setups and remote. And that is one of the gifts of this time. So I think there is more wiggle room there.
I think it's funny you gave that example of corporate. I remember working with this like leadership group, and they were sort of complaining in this session about how everyone stays there till 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. And so the question I asked was, well, who would like to leave earlier? And they all put their hand up. And it's like, but the peer pressure of like looking over at that person, they haven't left yet. It just creates this insane culture. Hey, Jenny, we've given you co-host access so you can share some maybe behind the scenes work of how you operate. I don't know where you want to take this. One question I had for you was something that people ask me is how I store like cool ideas or quotes that I get. And my process is it's white belt. I mean, I'll throw it into notes, maybe I'll tag it, but it's nothing like your black belt approach. Are you able to share the way that you sort of store, retain, access info that you hear?
Yes, you got it. Absolutely. And before I do that, I just want to come back to a question from Petra because it's on theme of the last batch, and then I'll get into sharing little tidbits that I find. So Petra had asked, how do I push the book without social media? So great question. And I've been thinking a lot about this. I go, oh boy, here's where it really comes time to walk the talk and not be tempted. It would be hard to tempt me to try to do a bunch, but a lot of people will tell me, great, now you got to do all this social promo or whatever. I have built in word of mouth to many moments of the book because I love word of mouth marketing. And I really think that if I've written a good book, when you put it down, you will want to tell a friend. And that if I create a good podcast episode, after you listen, you will organically, genuinely want to send it to a friend. And to me, it might be a high bar. I'm not sure. But that's the only bar. It's like, if I didn't create something good enough that you are jumping out of your chair to send it to a friend, I got to keep creating more quality stuff. Like people really criticize this mindset. If you build it, they will come. But word of mouth is something that I genuinely cultivate, and I will design word of mouth features. So in the book, at the end of the book, you can send a free time permission slip to a friend. Just like, Petra, you hereby have permission to go off social for a month. And that's one way of building in word of mouth. The pre-order bonus is not quite ready yet, but it will be live in December. The pre-order bonus is buy one, get one, give one. So if you pre-order the hardcover, you get early access to the audiobook, and then you get to gift audiobook access to a friend. So I could have stopped at just giving whoever pre-orders, giving them audiobook access. But I figure, hey, if I can give away a second copy to one of your friends, you get to feel good for giving a gift. It kind of honors my generosity value. But also a friend, now two people are learning about the message of free time and getting excited about it and maybe able to help support the launch. The other thing that helps me is taking more of a long view on a launch. So I think where social can help you create some kind of crazy burst or spike during a launch week, it takes so much more than that to keep a book alive over the long haul. Michael Larson is an author. He says, authors don't keep books alive, readers do. So whatever I feel I would miss from not doing like being everywhere on social media during the launch week, I just try to stay focused on systems and continually nurturing, planting seeds for something like a book launch over a year. So instead of thinking of it as launch week, it's launch month and launch year, and constantly reminding myself to focus on the longer term picture of it. So I hope that's helpful, but you do need some channels like podcast, newsletter. My newsletter is a disaster because I haven't been sending to it. So I think it's better to be a little more consistent than me. But there again, I just figure if people really enjoy it, the book, once they put it down, they'll tell a friend. And that actually has nothing to do with me personally being on social. Okay, so let's talk about Notion. Notion is a tool that Leanne mentioned. And if you're listening here and you're not watching on video, I'll make sure that everything's super clear. It doesn't necessarily matter what tool you use. I'm just mentioning it because I love geeking out on tools. But yeah, I will share some of the systems that I've set up for staying organized in terms of information, because I think if you have anything to do with thought leadership or whatever term you want to call it, one of your big assets is being able to harness complexity and pull data and curate information and share it back out in a meaningful way that people can connect with. So in my Notion dashboard, there's a couple of things that I set up this year that I find really helpful. I know somebody asked about quotes. So I read a book called How to Take Smart Notes. And it was about this German professor who created, he calls it a Zettelkasten system, it means slip box. It's a kind of a little bit of a complex thing to explain, but let's see here. Basically, anytime I find a quote or a concept or an idea, just any little bit of data that I want to capture and categorize, I create a note. I call my folder synthesis because Zettelkasten just didn't necessarily resonate. I was watching a TV show the other day and they mentioned TULOT, an abbreviation for the second law of thermodynamics. So I created a little card. Here, let me find another one. I wonder where I can find. Oh, there's so many. Okay, humor is in the gap. Let's see what that one's about. So when I take a note, I have the date it was created. I can tag it by topic. The chronological number is just the date. So 2021, October 11th. The Zettel number is that you can order your notes to go next to each other by topic. That's where it gets more complex. And I don't think everyone has to do it that way, but I'm experimenting with it. So I was reading a book called The Comic Toolbox, and I wanted to capture this comment, humor is in the gap. So like in my note here, my snippet says, like pivot, humor is in the gap. Read highlights. Here's a quote from the book. Treat the joke as a problem to be solved. Sometimes this requires nothing more than applying a tool to a situation. I'll note what type of note, this one's not a great example, which of my projects it connects to, if there's any related notes. So this is I'm probably overwhelming you because I didn't pick a great one, but I think what's important is creating different collection buckets for different areas of your life and work that you might want to capture. So when I have this synthesis box, it means these are little nuggets that I'm pulling out of the sky and putting them in my little collection bucket. I used to do this in Evernote in a folder called Curiosity. So the whole notebook in Evernote was just called Curiosity, and I would tag articles every time I saw something interesting. Over time, you can start to look for themes. So I had created a notebook called How We Work. I thought maybe I'll write a book called How We Work. I didn't know that was 4 or 5 years ago. It eventually became Free Time, but I had already tagged and clipped all these articles just in these 2 buckets. So I don't think you need too many buckets. You just need somewhere to collect what's interesting to you. This year, I started also doing a reading record. So I have a list of now the books I read, because I used to do this in my journal. I used to keep it by hand. But what's nice about creating this reading record in my digital system is everything is linkable to each other. So here's a book I reread called Overwhelmed. And I put the author, when I started, when I finished, tags about the book. And then I can link to other places in my Notion database. So I can connect it to a solo episode of a podcast or another book that I'm reading. And what starts to happen is that all these little bits and bobs start to tie into each other. And it becomes faster to create content and synthesize ideas. Another collection bucket that I use comes from a guy Leanne had on the podcast, Matthew Dix, who wrote a book called Storyworthy. So Leanne, we'll have to put that episode in the show notes because I found out about Storyworthy from you and your podcast. Matthew Dix talks about homework for life and that every day we should capture this moment, one moment from the day of transformation. And I just think this is so fascinating that his philosophy is that a story is about 5 seconds of your life. It's 5 seconds of transformation for better or for worse. So here's a good one. I created a story the other day called How Perfect This Is, How Lucky We Are. And same thing, I put the date I created it, the topics are tagged. The snippet is that I saw a plaque on a bench at Central Park and the leaves were kind of mid-molt. It was this gorgeous day. And I put a picture in the note of this plaque on the bench that says, how perfect is this? How lucky are we? And then the interesting thing is I also put a picture of the view from that bench was this stunning view that if you're here with us on video, you can see is like this gorgeous lake or pond in Central Park with the trees changing colors. They're perfectly reflected in a totally calm, still, serene scene. And it was just so exquisite. And this was my little Storyworthy capture. So what ends up happening is that I know we're here talking about for first-time facilitator, when I'm going to give my next speech or workshop or even a session like this, I have this pool of personal anecdotes to draw from. And I don't know that I would have remembered this bench or this view if I hadn't documented it here. So I'm very grateful to Leanne and Matthew Dix. And these little snippets, I can now link to this note when I'm crafting a keynote or a webinar or something. I can actually just pull in. And I've done that now where I pull in stories. So this is a collection bucket of personal stories. And
Jenny,
so on and so on. Yeah.
Just on that. So when do you actually capture it? Do you capture it? So you took the photo in Central Park. When do you then upload it? Do you like go home and do it? Or because my
right then.
Oh yeah. Cause I'd forget.
Right then. Yeah. I just pull up Notion on my phone. I create it. Sometimes I get sloppy and like with the synthesis folder, I don't fill out all the info. Like second law of thermodynamics, I just actually don't think I've filled in anything yet, but it's a note to myself to at least go fill in the details.
Awesome. I'm going to get it on my phone. I only use Notion on desktop. This is so inspiring. Yeah, I love it.
One more thing I want to show you. KIT is my, instead of calling it a CRM, customer resource manager, who knows what the heck. I always forget because I sort of block it out of my memory because of people who use CRMs poorly, where it's so obvious, like, hi, Leanne, just checking in. Wanted to see how you're doing. But my KIT bucket is also people that I put. So it's a collection bucket of people that I want to follow up with. And I put things like their birthday, when we last spoke, spouse, kids. I mean, it's not to be creepy, but I realized I could do a much better job of keeping up with people that aren't in my obvious immediate family. So instead of calling it a CRM, I call it a KIT, and it's a collection bucket for people to remind me to check in.
Oh, this is so good. As on the video, we can see all the headline titles and topics on the left here. Yeah. And I love that you haven't separated this from your life as well. So you've also got things like financial, fitness tracking. So you don't really separate work and life. Work with life. You sort of integrate it through.
Well, interestingly, this is my personal home base that you're looking at, because the Storyworthy capture and even the synthesis, sometimes a little more private than I might want my team to see. Like I wrote a synthesis on 9 wives where I was overwhelmed. And I thought we need to have 9 wives because one is not good enough. Oh, that's in my Storyworthy. And sometimes I don't want to be self-conscious that my team's going to read these things. So yeah, this stuff is in my personal home. And then I have a lot more dashboards that go in my main business Notion, if you will, as well.
Amazing. Joel, what does KIT stand for?
Oh, keep in touch. It's like a summer camp thing. Maybe, I don't know if you have that.
Yeah.
Did you guys say that? Did you ever say that at summer camp or anything? Or like a high school yearbook, KIT?
No. Well, we say keep in touch, but we don't actually put the acronym on it, which is interesting because we usually shorten everything in Australia. So there we go. Hey, one thing we're working with, right? So if this is the program that we're in, it was called Booked Out Facilitator. And there's then some assumption that your calendar is booked out Monday to Friday, and that's not the case. I mean, that's not what I certainly want. And I know when I got Alan Weiss on the the podcast a couple of years ago, he basically said, oh, your business model is wrong if that's the case. So something that you do to free up your time as a business owner is that you have your original public thinking, you add frameworks, and then you license it. There are a couple of questions here about, Petra, do you have a question about licensing or?
Yeah, absolutely. This is also one of the most fascinating parts and most mysterious parts also when it comes to licensing. So clearly you've licensed Pivot. I'm curious, are there requirements to have certain results, certain processes, certain systems, time frames, anything that you have to do before you can license it? And what's a better way to say it's a 6 months program, it's 12 months, you get all the rights, you get a little bit of rights. What's the best way to license a program?
Yes.
Thank you.
I mean, this is a whole can of worms. Like this could be its own entire day, month, year of studies. It took me 5 years to wrap my head around licensing. So I'll give the highlights. And then there's just so much more that could be followed up in any of the details. What I will say is that what do you need to do before licensing? I do think that having an established brand for yourself and for the IP is helpful. So for example, Pivot is the first thing that I licensed. There was a book around it. The book got a lot of press. The book was well received. I'd done a ton of keynotes for the book. So there was a lot in place. Like with all the keynotes and interactive workshops, I had tested the material over and over and over and over. So I knew what should go into the licensing package eventually. It happened sort of reactively that one of my clients said, how can we scale this? And I wrote Pivot before it came out. I knew in the back of my mind, I wanted to create licensing. I wanted licensing to be part of my business model. I just didn't know how to get clients or how to do any of it. Like you're asking, Petra. The mistake I made, but I don't know if I could have done it otherwise, was that for my first 2 licensing clients, I set them up as these bespoke consulting agreements, meaning even though it was big numbers, big paychecks that they were paying me, I was on the phone with them every week. We were co-building the facilitator guide together. We were building the workbook together. We were building it all together. Everything was with them for them. And the materials were housed internally at those companies. And these are big, fancy brands like Google and Chanel. So I can't say I regret having done it because and there's still clients to this day. It got me in the door and it helped me create. But I realized after first came Google, then came Chanel, I realized, oh no, I have a problem here because if I get another licensing client, I'm just setting myself up for so much work again, where I'm on these calls. I feel so much pressure because they're paying me a lot of money. At that point, what I did was I had kind of a lull and I created a common core of materials. And this was a slide deck, a facilitator guide, participant handouts, train the trainer. I'm trying to think Leanne knows for sure too, because Leanne was part of some of these. I think one thing I'm missing, but what I did was I made it agnostic. It was not specifically for any company. And I made sure that they were branded well. I hired somebody to help judge my slides and create the Pivot workbook. So there was the Pivot book itself, the Pivot workbook, which I had created when the book was coming out, the facilitator guide for Train the Trainer, the slide deck, and the participant handouts. I created all of those as an off-the-shelf bundle so that my next licensing client, I was not co-creating anything. And if I was, they'd have to pay double. So now it's licensing, or what people commonly just call train the trainer, because organizations don't always know the term licensing, but they know train the trainer. Now there's an off-the-shelf kit. And while I used to think that they might be upset that they're not getting this bespoke solution, I realized they're probably happier. It's tested, it's vetted, it's polished, it's beautiful, it exists already. They're not relying on me to create something and they have to keep following up. It's there. I think it's like one click order. It's ready. You sign up for licensing, you can roll it out tomorrow. I like the unlimited model, which is for larger organizations, but it's harder to sell, where unlimited is they pay you an amount of money, 100 grand, 200 grand, and they can run it as much as they want. There's no tracking. What people are more used to, I think, is train the trainer, where they pay you per trainer. So I used to have a minimum of 10 trainers I would train at a given time, 3,500 per trainer. Now I might lower that to 5. And then they pay you per participant who actually uses the material. So every time those trainers run a session, you need a way to track the participants through an assessment or a quiz or a QR code. And then you would just bill them based on the number of participants. So I think that second model, it's not as much money up front, but it allows them to roll it out and kind of test the material. And It's a little more complicated because you have to track, but I think it's a little easier to get your foot in the door that way.
Excellent. Thank you. Got a question. I'll throw to Jade, who's got a question that's come through. And just before I move to you, Jade, I just want to say that JB, the materials you created were outstanding. Think of like the coolest guy that you could get. I've still got it here. I still it's full color. It's really, it's just beautifully designed. There's even some tear out sheets if you're doing, 5-minute career conversations, things like that. I think you thought of everything. No stone left untouched there. It's just a beautiful pack. So I just wanted to give you credit for that. Jade, over to you.
Thanks, Jenny. This has been awesome. I just have a question because you've mentioned the word pressure a few times and perhaps the notion of relieving pressure. But sometimes pressure is good and can be motivating. So how do you know when it's the right amount of pressure and when it's tipping into too much pressure that you want to relieve, kind of thing?
Yeah, such a good question. And I think this is very individual for each of us too, of how we work and what motivates us. Some people, like you said, love pressure or love deadlines. Even in Myers-Briggs typology, I think, they say that the judging J's have a more linear, I like to procrastinate, get things done as early as humanly possible for any upcoming deadline. And then I'm married to a P, and they say that P's are like bumblebees. They like to sort of roam and explore. And then at the last minute, they have a surge of energy because of that deadline. Whereas for me, ever since even university, deadlines just give me hives. But you're right, Jade, even having a book release date is good because it means I can't be perfect at anything. And I like knowing for big, meaningful projects, there is a deadline, there is some pressure around it, but that does energize me. The crux of free time and the free time framework, the main diagnostic is where are you in friction and where are you in flow? So I think you can be experiencing good pressure, eustress as it's called, and be in flow around that. Or where it becomes friction and excessive friction is that dirty pressure. When I say dirty, I mean oh, it's heavy. It's heavy. It's sad. It feels like you're not good enough and you're not doing enough. And as my life got more complex, I got married, we got a dog, I own a house in New York. It's the level of overall pressure and cognitive load of just thinking about people more than myself multiplied so much. And I had to keep removing pressure points in the business. And maybe not everybody deals with this, but I do. It's something about being sensitive, highly sensitive, both physically even and mentally, emotionally, energetically, all of it, even just sensitive to other people's energy. So for me, because I keep mentioning pressure, I think what you're highlighting, Jade, that's the first time I'm putting it to words, is that I am always looking for where is there too much pressure and how can I create systems and business models and revenue streams and mindset shifts to relieve that pressure. And so when I find that pressure, it motivates me to solve it for myself and for other people. So it's funny you brought that up, that pattern, because I wouldn't have noticed it. But I now realize every solution I've ever come up with has been a result of unwanted pressure that bothered me, that I felt like I won't want other people. I hope, Petra, it doesn't take you 5 years to crack the licensing nut like it took me. I hope that, I think one of the great joys I have is helping reduce pressure from other people. And the way my friend put it, which is very profound, she said, my core emotional wound, she's not overly emotional herself, but the work she does around finding people's zone of genius, she'll just straight up ask you, what's your core emotional wound? And in my case, I said it was feeling like a burden growing up. I saw how hard my parents were working, how stressed they were about money, getting divorced, and I felt like a burden. So my life's work is unburdening others. So I think free time is a manifestation of that, of I felt so much pressure around me, I felt like I was the cause of that pressure, not to take this into total armchair psychologizing, but the pressure is something that I think our society, we just keep pushing more and more and more, especially with technology, 24/7 apps, social media. And it's who is profiting from that pressure? So that's why I get so passionate about it. So that's my long winding answer.
I love it. Dave, do you want to respond or?
I just think that's absolutely amazing. And I'm glad I gave you an opportunity to talk about it because it's something I think that we just have sitting in the background all the time, pressure, and then just having it cognitively in the front of your mind going, okay, where are the pressure points? Where is there friction? Where is it hurting? How can I alleviate that is such a great framework to be optimizing from. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. This is
You're
awesome.
so welcome. Yeah. And then I call it patient zero, as you solve that for yourself, especially if you're not finding great solutions out there, then you get to create it and you get to go through your own process, but then share it with others. So I think we have this opportunity as well to have a front row seat and observe not just how we get out of something, but I guess that's the benefit of being a creative. On the one hand, there's more pressure because there are no rules and we're sort of creating something out of nothing. But then because of that, all of our life is ripe for solutions and then being able to share those. And I think that's like a very joyful part, because self-employment comes with so much pressure as is. Yeah. Let alone from other people.
Yeah. And even, I mean, I love that you put that permission slip in your book. I'd sort of joked in chat that, give me permission to get off LinkedIn for a month. But even, I mean, right back to the start of this conversation, when you said, stop thinking about the worst thing that could happen if you jump off, you're not connecting with people, you're not, building that brand on that platform, but think of all of the incredible benefits. Like maybe I will get a book out next year because I give up Instagram. So I love it. And also detecting that pressure. And I think we've all felt that heavy sense of pressure. I mean, I was on a project last year where I would wake up in the morning, open my eyes, and I just feel it right from the beginning of the day. And I think it's kind of easy to pick up pressure when it's that intense. But what I love about free time, it's picking up the micro moments, like kind of like a bit of a mosquito or a fly buzzing around. And like, if you can sort out at that level, you won't have, you're preventing that massive pressure that comes around.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah. So Jenny, I mean, we've spoken a lot about the frameworks in your book. We're so excited to hear more about it. I know it's being released in March, but it's available for pre-order now. Can you share some more details on how we can find it?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Leanne, and everybody for these great questions. I just love them so much. And it's really fun to get your early insights. You can learn more about the book at itsfreetime.com/book. So that's itsfreetime.com/book. And it depends when this goes live, Leanne, but the nickname is BOGOGO. That's the buy one, get one, give one. So that will be ready very shortly in December. And it's all set up. If you go to itsfreetime.com/BOGOGO, BOGOGO, then you can throw your hat in the ring. It just have to still put the finishing touches. So just give me a little patience around when you get the audiobook, but it would mean that you get the audiobook access in December through a private podcast feed, which I know, Leanne, you're really good about setting those up for various things that you do.
Amazing. And if you can see in chat, Jenny, there's so much little love and appreciation.
Thank you.
Coming your way for spending your time with us, your free time. I know it's like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock now over in New York. I'm so happy to introduce you to the Booked Out Facilitators and, of course, First Time Facilitator again. I love your work. I just madly follow everything you do. If I can do even 20% of the stuff that you talk about in your book, I think my life will change for the better. It's been awesome having you here. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Leanne. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Here's to being perfectly, ideally booked out in 2022, even if that's one client a month at the rate that is most joyful for you. I think less is more, and then charging more is more. So those are my parting words. Thank you all so much for being here. And it's truly an honor to have you engage with this material, because I don't have to tell you, it's nerve-wracking to just take something from one's own mind and then put it out there into the world. So this is, I think, my first official interview for Free Time. So thank you for all being the kickoff. I really appreciate it. And the last thing I forgot to mention, if you want to take the quiz early, that is ready. So it's freetime.com/quiz.
Perfect. We'll
Thank you so much. Thank you, Leanne. I love everything you do too. And it was my great joy to feature you in the book. So thank you for being you.
Thank you. Yay.
Thanks everybody for listening.